4 women, 1 man, 4 babies on the way. And somehow, people are clapping like this is a badge of honor. Seriously, when did juggling multiple partners become a goal? Cardi B is talented, funny, and iconic. But her love life is a mess of repeated patterns, heartbreak, and poor choices. And it's not just drama. It's a lesson about attraction, value, and why fame doesn't fix emotional chaos. Stick around, because the truth behind the headlines is crazier than you think. I know this might ruffle some feathers, but let's take a moment to really unpack what's happening here. When did it become socially acceptable, or even something to aspire to be pregnant by a man while multiple other women are in the same situation? Seriously, when did this become goals? And beyond the drama, it raises a bigger question: is money really the root of all evil? Because if you scroll through the comments, it's astonishing to see people applauding this behavior, treating it like some kind of upgrade or badge of honor. It's almost as if they are saying, well, she's rich, famous, and doing her thing, so who cares about the consequences? But that's exactly where the problem lies. We can't simply ignore the moral and emotional complexities of these situations just because the parties involved have wealth or status. Now, don't get me wrong, I genuinely like her. I love her music. She's talented, charismatic, and undeniably entertaining. But when one of you sent me a screenshot while I was minding my own business, it really made me stop and think. The message read, a paternity test confirmed that Stefon Diggs is the father of IG model Elope Paris's baby girl. On top of that, Diggs is also expecting a child with his girlfriend, rapper Cardi B. That means, as things currently stand, he has 4 children on the way with 4 different women. 4. Let that sink in. 4 separate families, 4 separate women, all connected by a single man. And we're supposed to clap, celebrate, or call this true love? Honestly, it's baffling. True love, by most reasonable standards, doesn't look like this. True love doesn't involve juggling multiple partners while spreading oneself so thinly. True love doesn't generate a constant cycle of hurt, confusion, and complicated emotions for everyone involved. And yet, here we are, with social media acting like this is the pinnacle of achievement. What makes the situation even more fascinating is that women, particularly those observing from the outside, are starting to notice that something is off in Cardi B's relationship with Diggs. Let's be honest and stop sugarcoating things. He doesn't seem genuinely invested in her. He's not demonstrating the type of commitment, loyalty, or emotional availability that most people would expect in a healthy relationship. Instead, it appears that every few days, a new woman surfaces with a baby fathered by him. The energy during interviews is awkward, tense, and, frankly, strange. Diggs comes across as distant and emotionally unavailable, almost like the same person we know, but slightly rearranged. Familiar yet off, predictable yet unreliable. It's hard to admit, but Cardi, this speaks volumes about the patterns in the men you choose and how those choices reflect on your sense of self-worth. Bottom of the barrel. Literally. You divorced your husband because he cheated on you, presumably wanting someone who could give you the love, respect, and loyalty you deserved. Yet now, you find yourself in a situation where Diggs appears to be following a remarkably similar pattern. Emotionally distant, spreading himself across multiple women, and creating a web of complications that could have been avoided. It's not a judgment on your character. It's an observation of the patterns that emerge when we make repeated choices, sometimes driven by attraction or circumstance rather than compatibility or values. Insiders suggest that Diggs doesn't have strong feelings for Cardi B, and this shouldn't come as a shock. Women's intuition about these matters is rarely wrong, and many observers have been noticing the warning signs for a while. The subtle cues, the awkward interactions, the lack of genuine emotional investment. All of it adds up. Cardi, you're funny, charming, and undoubtedly a remarkable individual, but the men you consistently choose indicate a recurring theme. You gravitate toward men who are, in essence, unavailable or unwilling to offer the kind of emotional security that a long-term partnership requires. And that pattern doesn't exist in isolation. It sends signals to everyone watching about how you value yourself and what you're willing to accept in relationships. Let's also be clear about the broader societal implications of this. Social media has normalized and even glorified these kinds of situations. People see famous figures engaging in complex, morally gray relationships and interpret it as aspirational, as something to emulate. But the reality is far less glamorous. Behind the headlines, there's emotional turmoil, confusion, and often, a sense of emptiness. The cheers from the comment sections are superficial, failing to account for the deeper consequences of repeated cycles of unfaithfulness and fragmented relationships. It's one thing to admire talent, charisma, and personal success. It's another entirely to romanticize a lifestyle that is unsustainable, complicated, and potentially damaging to all involved. In Cardi B's case, the contrast between perception and reality couldn't be starker. On one hand, she's a superstar, someone who has built a formidable career and commands respect and admiration from millions. On the other hand, her personal life paints a very different picture, one where patterns of attraction, poor partner selection, and repeated emotional compromise have created a cycle that many women are now beginning to see for what it is. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of self-worth, boundaries, and recognizing patterns before they become entrenched. Ultimately, this isn't just about Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, or anyone else in the public eye. It's a reflection of larger truths about human behavior, attraction, and the choices we make. True love, loyalty, and respect are not measured by the number of Instagram followers, the money in a bank account, or the social approval of strangers online. They are measured by consistency, commitment, and the ability to prioritize the well-being of everyone involved. And if you ignore those principles, the consequences, complicated as they may be, are inevitable. So, as much as this situation is fodder for gossip, outrage, or judgment, it's also a lens through which we can examine the deeper issues of relationships, attraction, and self-respect. Cardi B is talented, funny, and engaging, but the repeated choices she has made reflect patterns that speak to broader truths. Attraction alone is rarely enough to sustain meaningful relationships, and ignoring red flags in favor of surface-level chemistry can lead to predictable and often painful outcomes. And that's the real story behind the headlines. And she's not the only one noticing this. Was it just one of those moments where she needed to be with someone else to get over Offset? Speaking of Offset, he's reportedly trying to claim half of everything Cardi B owns in their settlement. She even offered him $10 million, and he refused, saying, "No, I want it all because I helped build your brand." Classic bandit move. Meanwhile, back to Cardi and Stefon, she's pregnant, and Diggs is doing his own thing. Looking at Offset, he's the guy all these women were hyped about, yet Cardi moved on. And rightfully so, because she deserves better. Women often talk about these dynamics. They are not settling for less, they expect a man to bring his full worth, and the demands can be intense. This ties into the bigger conversation about dating, men, and social dynamics. A question for the men who truly believe this: do you want us all inbred? Because if only a small percentage of men were getting all the women, genetically, we'd be closer than ever. And this brings us to the 80-20th rule, a topic that's been dissected for years, highlighting the same patterns in who gets what, and why it's been a point of discussion for over a decade. Do 80% of women really want the top 20% of men? This question has sparked endless debates online, and for many, it's treated as if it's some universal truth of the dating world. But the reality, as some critics argue, is much more nuanced. And frankly, the statistic itself is misleading. If it were truly the case that 80% of women are targeting the same top 20% of men, we would see dramatic biological and social consequences. Genetically, socially, and emotionally, the outcomes would be far more homogenized. Clearly, that isn't what happens in real life. Human attraction is far too complex to be reduced to a simple formula. Desire, compatibility, values, timing, and circumstance all play significant roles, and these factors are infinitely more complex than any 80-20th rule could capture. Yet when you look at Cardi B's situation, there's a temptation to think that the 80-20th idea has some truth to it, at least in her personal choices. Cardi B is vocal about her need for peace, love, respect, and emotional security. She has experienced her share of public and private challenges, particularly in her relationship with Offset. The cheating scandal was only the tip of the iceberg. There were deeper issues, including emotional strain, miscommunication, and what she has described as a series of complicated interactions with other women. Despite all of that, Cardi doesn't seem to mind, or perhaps even fully comprehend, the implications of her relationship with Stefon Diggs, who is reportedly fathering children with multiple women while also being involved with her. This raises an important point. Maybe, in Cardi's eyes, Diggs represents part of the elusive top 20% of men, while Offset never reached that level in her estimation. Attraction is subjective, and what one person sees as top tier might look completely different to someone else. It's not just about wealth, fame, or social standing, it's about how a person aligns with one's desires, values, and emotional needs. Cardi may genuinely feel a connection with Diggs in ways she didn't with Offset, which could explain why she seems more willing to tolerate certain behaviors that many would consider deal breakers. But here's where the nuance becomes critical. Wanting the top men doesn't automatically mean women will get them, just as merely applying to Stanford doesn't guarantee admission. The pursuit of high-value partners is layered with competition, timing, and individual choice. In Cardi B's case, she may be drawn to the excitement, status, or charisma that Diggs represents, but that doesn't ensure his loyalty, investment, or long-term commitment. Attraction and desire are not equivalent to partnership or emotional security. Just because someone wants something, or someone, doesn't mean that the object of their desire is equally motivated, capable, or available to meet those needs. This is where broader social and psychological dynamics come into play. Cardi, like many women, may often find herself in situations where men like her or are attracted to her, yet the choices she makes repeatedly put her with partners who are, for one reason or another, not suitable for a lasting, fulfilling relationship. Observers have even commented bluntly that she appears to have a pattern of bad taste in men, repeatedly selecting partners who fail to meet her emotional or relational needs. This isn't a moral judgment, it's about alignment. Values, behaviors, and priorities need to match in a healthy partnership, and when they don't, patterns of disappointment and public scrutiny naturally emerge. The similarity between Cardi's past with Offset and her current situation with Diggs is striking. In both cases, the men she's been involved with share common traits: emotional unavailability, inconsistency, and patterns of behavior that create instability. What this shows is a deeper reflection of preference, attraction, and perhaps even subconscious repetition. Patterns are incredibly telling in human behavior. Our choices often mirror previous experiences, even if we consciously aim to avoid repeating mistakes. Until someone actively changes these patterns or adjusts their criteria, criticism from outsiders, saying she should do better or choose differently, is unlikely to resonate or affect real change. It's also important to consider the social dimension. Public scrutiny adds another layer of complexity. Cardi B is constantly in the spotlight, with millions of people observing, commenting, and forming opinions about her personal life. That kind of pressure magnifies perceived patterns of behavior, sometimes unfairly, but also highlights the consequences of repeated choices. In the public eye, every decision is amplified, and each partner she chooses becomes part of a narrative about her values and priorities, whether she intends it or not. Ultimately, Cardi B's situation underscores the limitations of simplified rules like the 80-20 theory. Human relationships are not transactional or mechanical. They are dynamic, complicated, and influenced by countless personal, cultural, and emotional factors. Desire, attraction, and perception of value are all subjective, and what might look like the top 20% to one person can be completely different to another. Cardi's repeated choices with partners like Diggs and Offset reflect not just momentary attraction but also deeper patterns that influence her relational life. The takeaway is multifaceted. First, attraction alone doesn't guarantee loyalty, compatibility, or fulfillment. Second, patterns in partner selection can reveal underlying preferences, values, or unexamined behaviors that impact relationship outcomes. Finally, while public criticism may focus on the superficial choices someone makes, the real insight comes from understanding why those patterns persist and what they reveal about human nature, desire, and alignment. Cardi B's story is, in many ways, a modern case study in how attraction, choice, and societal observation intersect, and it offers lessons that extend beyond celebrity gossip into the broader realm of relationship dynamics and personal accountability. When it comes to someone who actually has something to lose by being with Cardi B, the reality is, there's not many. Stefon Diggs will show up here and there, but he's not going to be around all the time handling her kids, and she knows it. But that doesn't matter to her because she's drawn to him, plain and simple. In fact, she seems more attracted to Diggs than to Offset, and this highlights a broader truth for men. The husband or partner who puts in the most effort often gets less attention than the one she's genuinely attracted to, who gets all the leeway. I've seen this personally. Guys feel slighted when a woman gives her loyalty or affection to someone doing less for her, but the truth is, attraction isn't transactional. Diggs clearly doesn't value Cardi B in any meaningful way, yet she demonstrates publicly that she doesn't demand that seriousness either. The message this sends to men is loud and clear. She's not taking herself seriously, and it can shape how future partners perceive her. Even if a man isn't in the same league as Diggs, it doesn't change the perception. Men see the pattern, and it sets expectations. So, If she ever tried to flip the narrative and demand royal treatment later, the reality is, people would already have judged the pattern she's displayed. At the end of the day, what Cardi B gets is exactly what she puts out, mostly attention and applause. And that's it. There's an old saying, water seeks its own level, and it applies here perfectly. A lot of people think she's settling or accepting less, but that's not the case. She's settling for what she's worth. Men often get frustrated by this, especially when they've invested time, energy, money, or loyalty into someone only to see her attention go elsewhere. And yes, it stings. Cardi's situation illustrates a universal truth. Entitlement alone does not guarantee desirable results. One can believe they deserve the best, claim their value, and expect premium treatment, but if actions don't align with words, the universe, or in this case, the dating market, responds accordingly. Without self-improvement, boundaries, and refined standards, entitlement becomes an empty promise, disconnected from reality. It's a harsh truth, but it applies broadly across all human interactions, not just celebrity relationships. The principle is the same whether someone is a high-profile star or navigating a private life. You reap what you cultivate, and choices that appear emotional, impulsive, or reactive rarely yield consistent, high-quality outcomes. Moreover, the public nature of Cardi's life intensifies these dynamics. Unlike most people, she operates in a world where millions of observers scrutinize her every move, magnifying perceived patterns and making each choice part of a larger narrative. When a woman publicly displays emotional volatility, it signals to potential partners a set of risks: the risk of drama, unpredictability, or relational instability. For men seeking long-term partnership, such signals are often deal-breakers. Consequently, those who might have invested in a serious relationship step back, while those who are comfortable with less conventional or less committed dynamics, like Stefon step forward. This is a classic example of how behavior and perception intersect in the dating world. It's also worth noting that the downgrade effect isn't just about numbers or exclusivity, it's about relational power and agency. When someone allows patterns to persist without reflection, without evaluation, and without intentional change, they send a signal to the market, to potential partners, and to themselves: this is what I accept, this is what I tolerate. And by doing so, they inadvertently lower their bargaining power, their leverage, and the quality of partners willing to invest in them fully. In Cardi's case, public displays of frustration, chaos, and emotional volatility, combined with her tolerance of Diggs's pattern of behavior, created a dynamic where the highest quality suitors chose to step aside, leaving room for someone willing to operate on entirely different terms. The lesson here is universal. Real change requires self-reflection, action, and an honest assessment of one's own patterns. Without this, the consequences are unavoidable. Repeated cycles of dissatisfaction, repeated engagement with partners who don't meet expectations, and a gradual erosion of relational value. In the modern dating landscape, where social perception, personal branding, and emotional intelligence all play a role, the principle is simple. Your relational outcomes are often a reflection of the effort, boundaries, and personal growth you invest in yourself. If you don't evolve, your circumstances don't magically improve. Ultimately, Cardi B's situation serves as a compelling case study in how patterns, perception, and choice intersect in relationships. She's talented, charismatic, and extraordinary in many ways, but her choices illustrate a deeper truth. If you don't actively refine yourself, set clear standards, and prioritize personal growth, even those who might initially seem like strong partners will not meet your long-term needs. The world of dating, celebrity or otherwise, operates on the principle that effort and value must align. When they don't, the outcome is inevitable, and the lesson is clear. Without self-improvement and intentional choices, one's position in the relational hierarchy is never secure. It sounds harsh, but the truth is the truth, and no amount of wishing changes it. If you wanted a different outcome, the solution would be changing your behavior, but when that doesn't happen, the consequences follow. Every person who wants more in life has to give more. You can't expect better treatment just because you desire it. If that worked, Cardi wouldn't have ended up in the situation she did with Offset in the first place. So, congratulations, Cardi B, you've transitioned from being a married woman to a part-time, booty clapper situation. That's the reality of her choices. At the end of the day, it's a lesson in effort, value, and consequences. And that's the straight talk.